I think
awesome.
a really good point, I was looking at your posts over the week, so we have stuff to talk about in my head, even though I always see them, was a lot of your stuff on what you're talking about now. And I guess for an agent, it's being accountable for your own intelligence, like in what you're saying.
Yes.
And a lot of the things you're talking about in your Instagram is, it's not that it's scary, it's just that you're, and this is in the true sense of the word, you're ignorant. Like, ignorant gets a bad rap. Ignorant is not anything, it's not saying something mean to you. Ignorance means you just don't know. And I think a lot of your posts and a lot of your messages, don't let ignorance stop you. Learn. What's the 5 Ps? Do you remember it?
Proper preparation prevents poor performance.
There you go. It doesn't matter how much money we get. If we don't close, it's no money, right? So no close is no money. I'm everything that I am because of my dad's death. And I wouldn't be as successful without his death. All right, Jason, before we even start, I'm super excited. We're Instagram, social media friends, and now we're meeting physically, and we're gonna have an unbelievable discussion. Jason, give us your spiel on yourself.
So Jason Wagner, I am the managing broker and owner of Greystone Realty, which is a small boutique firm that's now located in Arlington Heights. And so actually just moved out there just this last year. But our firm we've got 8 agents there. Our kind of claim to fame is like all of our agents are actually investors, and like agents that are out there doing it. Yes, at Greystone. So it's my own firm. I launched it in 2021, and so we've got 8 agents now. And so I like to say that I'm an agent that is actually out there playing the game at the highest level because I own property. Because I've got 19 units myself. I manage them. I've done rehabs. I've done flips. That's kind of how I got started in the business. And to be honest with you, I never wanted to be a real estate agent. I wanted to be the biggest, baddest flipper in the world, right? After HGTV but prior to actually jumping into real estate, I was in the corporate world and I spent 4 years really understanding like finance. And I was in these finance positions, head down, number cruncher, learning charts. And then I hated it, but ended up finding Rich Dad, Poor Dad, read a book, and I'm like, real estate's the way to go, right? And so ended up just doing the whole rehab stuff right away, got my license so that I could sell my own properties. Then I just realized that social media was a big thing, and I would talk about the flips, and people would come to me and be like, hey, Jason, can you help me buy a condo? And I was like, oh, yeah, I could help. Like, that's easy, right? I've been buying properties already myself. I can help you. And then I realized it was a heck of a lot easier to make a lot more money being an agent than it was flipping. But I still have like the big love for, I try to buy one property per year just to increase the rental portfolio that I have. And so that really helps me and my family. We've developed a nice set of passive income. We bring in $7,000 a month just from cash flow. So that helps pay for our house. And so I like to say that is like, I'm actually out there playing the game at the highest level. And where a lot of times you have agents that just like, they don't do that. They only sell, right? And so that's kind of like my differentiating part.
Yeah, you're sleeping with the enemy.
Yeah, sure.
That's exactly how I got involved.
Yeah.
So I was in finance. I was a trader, and my dad was always like, never put all of your eggs in one basket. So since I had so much money in the market, I was like, okay, what's the antithesis of that? Okay, the opposite of that is brick and mortar. So then I started buying buildings, and my sister would help me. And then finally she's like, I can't do this anymore. I have my own stuff to do. Just get your license and you can handle it yourself. So I got my license to do my stuff. And then on the trading floor, they're like, well, what are you doing? Oh, I bought this building. It's this and this and this. Guy walks up and he goes, can you help me find a building? Can you help me find a building?
Yeah.
And then it literally morphed. And then at some point, the real estate had surpassed the trading. And I was like, all right. And then as the trading market went pretty much pure gray box and black box, and I was a floor trader, I spent less and less time there. I would trade maybe for an hour and a half just to have some income come in. But then the bulk of my time was researching real estate. And the same reason, like, you're crunching numbers, and in, a little bit different in trading, you're looking at, you're more looking at like where things are going, what could happen, this stuff. So it's kind of the same thing, but more of a, I have a more of a, for myself, I'm more of a demographics person, which is kind of just the back end. And I just went to full real estate, and I was like, and it was just like, okay, so I'm basically trading still, but at a longer time frame versus, you know, at some point I was like 15% of the NASDAQ electronic trading. I'm like, okay, so instead of trading 17,000 times a day or whatever it was, I'm trading once every 2 years, but the concept is the same, finding value.
Exactly.
And creating value and buying under and selling over.
Yes, yeah. And just understanding charts and dynamics. And the funny thing is, like, here's what I respect about you is because you understand the data. And there's so much data that's at our fingertips in the real estate market. Every single agent has access to it, but nobody takes the time to actually like learn it and help their clients.
But I don't think they have the capacity.
I think you're right, so right? Like, because they haven't done the work. They maybe don't have any type of background, or they just don't find it fascinating, right?
Yeah.
And so I intrinsically find it fascinating because of probably my corporate start where I was in the finance and I was like, ooh, these charts are kind of cool. Oh, you know, here's how I can manipulate big data and like tell the story from what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all out there for you.
It is.
It's just your ability to be able to take that and be able to manipulate that data and then interpret it. Okay, this is the trend. Like we always said, the trend is your friend. That was like the comment that when I was training traders, I'm like, listen, don't fight the trend.
Yeah.
You may be right, but when a whole nation's going one way, by the time it turns, you're going to be broke.
Yeah.
So just the trend is your friend. Get a little ahead of it, but the trend is your friend. So like it's amazing because like definitely I always watch your stuff on Instagram, and you post. I'm not on Twitter, but you post your Twitter on Instagram, so I don't have to be. So, and I'll read that stuff all the time, and it's always like echoing what I always have thoughts of too.
Good.
And I think a really good point. I was looking at your post over the week, so we have stuff to talk about in my head, even though I always see them.
Yeah.
Was a lot of your stuff on what you're talking about now, and I guess for an agent, it's being accountable for your own intelligence, like in what you're saying.
Yes.
And a lot of the things you're talking about in your Instagram is, you know, it's not that it's scary. It's just that you're, and this is in the true sense of the word, you're ignorant. Like ignorant gets a bad rap. Ignorant is not anything. It's not saying something mean to you. Ignorance means you just don't know. And I think a lot of your posts and a lot of your messages, you know, don't let ignorance stop you. Learn.
Yes.
Like, and ignorance causes you to be apprehensive. Ignorance causes you not to want to get involved, and ignorance causes you to miss these opportunities. It's like a lot of your stuff has that theme through it. Hey, let's educate yourself. Like, let's educate you. And I think people like yourself, and I will say myself and a group of other people, they're providing something that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I know how I talk to new investors. When you have somebody that calls you up and says, hey, Jason, I want to get involved with what you're doing. I find it fascinating. I know nothing about it. What are the first couple things you're like, okay, let's sit down. This is what you got to know.
Yeah. Yeah. I always try to give them the path of least resistance, because a lot of times I'll get somebody who's just like, you know, hey, I want to take on a flip and I want to do this big gut rehab. And I'm like, I'll ask them, like, do you really want to do that? Like, do you have the resources to actually do that? Because here's what I'll tell you, like, you can get more success out of, instead of going down the biggest risk path. My big thing is like, let's go find you a 2 to 4 unit that you can go live in and house hack. And if you got to update one of those units, you get some construction knowledge from that, and you're living in it. It's offsetting your living costs. And then, you know, it's just a smart financial thing to kind of like baby step into, and you're getting some landlord experience too.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to ease people into something versus, you know, they buy one property and they completely screw it up, you know, and then they're just in over their head, and then it's just like, it's a disaster, right? So my advice is always, I want to give people, I've been down that route. I started with the flipping, and I had success on my first few projects, and then I had one that was terrible. You know, and it was the one that was terrible that was really the grittiness that I was able to find. But then I found like, oh, you know what? House hacking actually made a lot more sense in this situation. All I had to do was live there. I increased the rents. We had to renovate one of the units, and I still own that building, and it's a cash cow. And at the time, I had a 3% mortgage on it. And like, that's still concept, like that whole house hacking thing is just such an easy path into it. And so I feel like people just need to understand what's my lowest risk opportunity to kind of get into real estate investing, and not necessarily go like jump in the deep end. You know what I mean?
No one throws on 315 and starts squatting it before they do
exactly
185.
Yeah.
Move their way
right.
up.
Yeah. Right.
And I think, like whenever I get somebody, like if I get somebody that's under 30 and has no dependents and they're like, I want to buy a condo, the first thing I say to them is like, no, you don't.
Yeah. Right. No, you don't, because it's not going to appreciate it. It's not going to be a really,
you gotta own dirt.
Yeah.
And then I sit down with them. I said, please don't do that. I said, you have nothing tying you down. Mm-hmm. Buy a building, live in the shittiest unit.
Yeah.
Fix that unit when you're in there and just start going down the units. And
yeah.
I said, turn around. I think, I know you've mentioned it in the past, and I know people always mention it too, that are kind of like at where we're at in terms of owning stuff and seeing it. But like, when someone comes to me and says, I know that you've been doing it now and you've got a bunch of units, when somebody's like, when they start looking at the numbers, like I have buyers that look at the numbers and they're like, oh, there's no cash flow here. Mm-hmm. And I said, who cares?
Right.
There's no, you're not going to get rich off cash flow.
Yeah.
Unless you have thousands of units, you're borrowing other people's money.
Yep.
And you're just buying buildings. Cash flow is, I always tell people, you ever go in for a job and someone says, hey, we're going to start you off at $200,000. You have no experience. Let me tell you something. There's something wrong, and you're never going to make more money.
Yeah.
That is your top end dollar, and it's never going more, because if they have to tease you to take the job, if they have to show you a ton of cash flow to buy that building, that means there's no back end money. Mm-hmm. And the money's in the back end.
It is in the back end.
That's it.
Yes.
If you want to be rich, you want to make money, it's on the three things you said: fixing it up, increasing the rents, and we'll talk about depreciation and all the tax deductions.
And the principal pay down. Like, that's a big thing.
The principal pay down to me is like the cherry on top.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, I put 20 grand, my cash on cash, right? So I put 50 grand down on a $500,000 property. I live there, I move out, someone else goes in, and all of a sudden, maybe I accelerate my payments, but whatever. I'm 25 years old, all of a sudden I'm 50, and they're like, oh, that 50 grand you gave us 20 years ago, here's 500,000. Oh, and on top of it, you're still gonna get $7,000 a month.
Yes.
Where else is that gonna happen?
Yeah, right. I know. Real estate is just like, it's such the answer. It's the answer for growing your wealth. There is no secret. Like, the reason my net worth has increased as much as it has is because I own real estate. And the values of those properties collectively have gone up substantially because we've gone through a big market boom that was caused by COVID.
Yeah.
Right? And this whole last year of 2023, where we kind of did see more of a dip because of the interest rate shock, I was telling people, this is your moment to pounce.
Yes.
Because we have no supply. Nobody is selling their property because majority of America either has no mortgage or a mortgage that's under 6%, and we were up in the 7s, right? And there's no inventory right now. And so if you can find a property, I bought one in February, and we were able to, there were two reasons that I bought this one. The cash on cash was not impressive. It was like a base hit. But I understood it from, hey, we have upside on this. We could actually build out the basement. We could add an additional unit. There is kind of like a longer term play here. But we're going to be able to refinance this probably within the next couple of years. And it's going to increase our cash flow. But then also at the same time, I look at it from, if you have people that are high earners, okay, they need to buy real estate so that they can offset their taxes.
Yeah.
And so real estate agents are one of the very few people that qualify for the real estate professional status. Okay. And I was able to really take advantage of it this last year. I did cost segregations on 2 of my buildings that we bought last year. And the amount of taxes that I was able to offset was astounding.
Yeah.
And I was a decent producer last year, right? And so it's like, when you think about it from that perspective, there's a lot of agents that aren't really out there, helping their cause, and maybe they make, a good amount of money, but then half of their commission ends up going back in taxes. because they're not utilizing the resources that are available to them in the same game that they're playing, which is buy a building. It doesn't necessarily have to cash flow, but you're getting this massive cost segregation to offset your earned income, and nobody really understands that.
I never look at cash flow.
Yeah.
Never. I could care. I'll hold stuff that has a negative cash flow because I'm like, well, it's negative, but it really isn't. Mm-hmm. Like when people look at investment properties and they're doing their sheets and they're like, oh, this isn't cash flow. I'm like, really? I'm like, you're paying down I said, your renters are paying down $2,000 a month of your nut. I said, where do you think that money's going? I said, that's paying down your principal. When you sell it, you're getting all that money.
Yes.
Like, I don't understand how people don't see that. Mm-hmm. I think it's also, you were talking about real estate agents owning investment properties. I think for me, mm-hmm. and I think you would say the same, and not everyone could do it. I think not owning an investment property or ever owning an investment property and being a real estate agent, I don't think you could be a top agent.
No.
I don't, because that's like saying I want to race a car, but I don't know how it works.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to know how the car works if you're really going to be a race car driver, because when you're on the road, you know what needs to be changed. Mm-hmm. Like and even in, it's the interesting thing is you saying, then these people said, oh, can you help me buy a condo? Well, you're not looking, people that own real estate and invest real estate that are agents, we don't look at a condo as a place for you to live. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you're this.
Right.
I could care less.
Yeah.
When I pitch somebody, I'm like, I'm not you. My tastes are different than your tastes. Mm-hmm. So I'm not going to, like, people are like, what do you think? I'm like, I don't know. I'm not living there. But what I will tell you is this is where the neighborhood, these are how the schools are. This is where the transportation is. This is what's trending. And this piece of property in 5 years will be worth this much more or will be worth this much more. When people, I want to say 5 years ago would be like, hey, I'm looking for a 1 bedroom and I love Bucktown, I love this. Mm-hmm. I'm like, don't move to Bucktown on a 1 bedroom. I said, there's not a buyer for that in 5 years.
Yeah.
I said, it's all families.
Yeah.
I said, you want to buy a 1 bedroom? Go to Logan, go to Avondale,
yes.
Go to a place where the youth is moving to. Mm-hmm. I'm like, follow the tattoos.
Yes. Yeah.
I like follow that because you're not going to see returns because you have 1 and 2 bedrooms in Bucktown that are up maybe in the last 5 years, 5%. Mm-hmm. You have single family homes that are up 50.
Yes.
You have to know the demographics of how that environment is changing. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing with stocks. Yeah. Where is the world going?
Yeah.
You're going to invest in print media?
I mean, right. Yeah.
Like, how are newspapers doing for you?
Right.
Like, you got a good deal on a newspaper? That's great.
Exactly.
It's worthless tomorrow.
Yeah. You bring up a great point because, like, buying a condo, on the lake, I always tell people, like, I got a friend of mine. And he's like, Jason, I think I'm ready. I'm ready to buy real estate. And, I'm thinking about the condo on the lake. And I said, okay, let's talk about the benefits of buying a condo on the lake. I said, there's not too many that I can think of. I said, honestly, the appreciation that you're going to get is just not going to be there. Like, you have to own it for 5 years and maybe you can be able to sell it for what you bought it for. I said, but think about the house hack. And this is a beautiful story because I told him my whole house hacking strategy and he fell in love with it. And I said, dude, let's do this for you. And he's like, I wanted to do it, but I'm just too afraid. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to partner with you. And I said, you're going to take on the FHA mortgage and we're going to go find a building. And we found a building in Belmont-Cragen. It was turnkey. It was the most expensive Belmont-Cragen building out there.
All right, that surprises me because I would think that's not the route you want to go.
Right. Well, here's why the market was able to do this for me because the rents at the time were only $1,200.
Okay, it wasn't stabilized.
So, right. Yeah. So we bought this from a developer who had owned it, and $1,200 for all the rents. We've owned it for almost 2 years now, and we've raised all those rents from $1,200 to on average they're at $1,750. And I got 1 unit that goes in the 2000s. And so it's like we had a huge increase in the rent, and now that thing is cash flowing. Like,
let me explain that to people. So the way to make money in real estate is buying stuff that's not stabilized. And stabilized means that it's for me, everyone has different definitions of the world, but stabilized to me is that it's completely under rented, and you buy real estate on cap rates. A capitalization rate tells you what the base is producing. Basically, your dividend. That's how. Like, to dumb it down, I always tell people, this is the dividend. Microsoft has a dividend of this because this is what they make.
Yeah.
The building shoots out a dividend. In an interest rate environment, let's say it's at 6.5%. This is dummy math, back of the napkin math.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if your interest rate's at 6.5% right now, every time you raise the rent by $650 in that building to the bank is just made you $100,000. That's back of the math. So like, you taking $1,200 and going to $2,000, that unit alone has gone up $120,000 in value, because you don't buy outright, you buy leveraged, and the leveraged amount is going to be the amount that is on the interest rate. That's the leverage. So if you have a building that you paid $300,000 for and you take the rents up $3,000, I can sell that building for $650,000 literally in a New York minute. So that's what's stable.
Yes.
No one wants to. Here's the best part: no one buys unstabilized buildings. So like, when I send shit to my clients and they're like, "Oh, look at these rents; they're terrible." I'm like, "No. This is where you and I kick ass, because I can say I know the rents in that area."
You're right.
And I go,
and you have the delta there.
Yeah.
Like, you have opportunity.
So like, exactly. So like, something that's done well.
Yeah.
Like, I always say, man, we got to find a building from people that have owned it from the 50s or 60s. The same renters have been in there for 20 years.
Yes.
I go, because no one is going to buy that building. So the building inherently dips in price because of the cap rate. So you're buying. If this is trading. If this is fair value, I'm buying that future down here. This risk right here is built-in cushion. So the market can actually dip extremely, and I'm still under fair value.
Yes.
So no matter what happens in the market, because the market moves in three-phase waves, and that's a whole other thing. So no matter what happens, I'm always under fair value, and I jack those rents up. And when the market goes down, it doesn't matter, because I can sell that on a cap rate basis, and I can get out over where the market's at.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Did everybody take notes on that?
Yeah. No, that was beautiful. And like, we have to understand like what happened with the COVID environment. Not only did real estate prices like soar, but rents soared as well. When COVID first hit, rents tanked, and then they rebounded with a vengeance, and they went higher and higher and higher. Historically speaking, Chicago has always been like 2% increase in rents. Okay, nothing impressive, right? And then COVID happened, and people left the city, but then they came back, and there wasn't enough inventory for people. It's still very hard for people to find rental units, and we've saw rents increase over 20% in a lot of these areas. And if you just think about like the low-hanging fruit, I was looking at one point, I was very interested in self-storage, and I have a great friend of mine who did extremely well. He's also my best friend. Yeah.
He crushes.
He crushed it in self-storage. And his whole plan was like, he's like, Jason, we buy these places, they've owned it for a long time. They've never increased the rents. They don't know what the new market is.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden we've unlocked $1 million in value.
Yep.
Because we've raised the rents.
And you have dirt that you can hold on to forever.
Yep.
To me, it's like almost a land bank. It's like the storage is great and it gives you money.
Yep.
But at some point, that's a subdivision that some developer's going to pay you ridiculous amounts of money for.
Yeah. And so I was like, man, I'm really jealous of this, because I'm like, I spent all this time in real estate. I got all these toilets that are breaking and like all that thing. But the concept was, he didn't really do anything to the building. They did the cosmetic stuff. But it was just the market had appreciated, and he was able to buy it and make the move, better management. And we just went through literally a cycle just like that, which was, you didn't really have to do a ton. You could buy turnkey, and then chances are the person that owned that building had no idea where the new market was. And this is why real estate agents have the most value for people, because we're constantly looking at where the new market is.
Dude, we have all the data in our head. If you're as active as you are, that's a...
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest, there's maybe, and I've been doing real estate for now 22, 23 years. That's my brain fog. You get in your 50s, everything kind of fades out.
Yeah.
But
oh shit, man, you're 50. You look great.
Thank you.
Awesome.
I think there's like 15 people in total in the whole state of Illinois that understand what we're talking about, that are agents. I'm not even lying. 15.
See, that's disgusting.
20 may be me pushing it. And when I talk to agents, other agents, you know what their answer to me is? They're like, well, you do that stuff. I'm like, dude, like you have to get involved with development.
Yeah.
Because you become a better buyer's agent. Mm-hmm. It's not just the value that you bring, right? All your people at Greystone bring now to these people. It's like, hey man, I always that term, I sleep with the enemy. I know all the stuff. I know the shortcuts on rehab. I know this, I know that. I know what they can do. I know, hey, you think that's shiny, but hold up. This is what you really need to look at. How about these 3 or 4 things that are really good? A new chandelier is going to cost you a couple $100. Mm-hmm. That electric that's not done right, there's 7,000. So like, you want to diddle with this, or do you want to really know what's going on?
Yeah.
And I think, especially with the changes that are going on, mm-hmm. Jason, they're going to walk up to you and like, I have to pay you 2.5%. Okay. Well, you're like, this is what I provide.
Because I'm an advisor.
Yeah.
I'm an advisor in real estate. I know a lot more things that you didn't even know like existed.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to point them out to you. We're going to go on all I need is one property tour with somebody. If I go on one property tour with somebody and, first time, I am talking my ass off because I'm pointing out all of these potential things that they should just be looking at and be cognizant of. And it falls from layouts, but then it's also to what you're talking about, which is like, we're kind of looking at the inspection items as well, the major inspection items too, just to kind of knock those things out. I'm always turning on faucets. Like the biggest thing is like 1920s buildings all over Chicago. Okay. Chances are a lot of them have galvanized pipe, right?
Yeah.
And like how many agents are actually going in there and turning on the faucets just to see?
Dripping. You're like, oh, that's coming in on itself.
Right. Yeah. That's just like, okay, this is very obvious. Like, okay, you learn a lot of this stuff in the basement, but if it's a finished garden, you have no idea. It's really hard to tell. So let's go up to the second floor and let's just see what the water pressure is like, right? And so those are very simple things, but they blow people away.
Yeah, and I would say that you said that third flip you did, or maybe your third or fourth flip, it was tough. That was probably the flip that you learned the most on.
For sure. Yeah.
Your failures, like everyone's failures in life are like, okay, when shit's easy, you're like, all right, this is easy. Like you don't learn anything. I always tell my kids, when you win a game, you have not become a better player.
Right.
You just haven't.
Yeah.
When you lose and you sit back and reflect, what did I do wrong? That's when you've gotten better.
Yeah.
Because now you're like, okay, I did this, I did that. Everyone's like, when I'm sure you do the same thing, like when you're talking to people and a flip or this, like, how do you know that? I'm like, well, you know what? I got fucked on this.
Exactly.
I got screwed on that. This happened to me. This happened to me. I go, so all this garbage has happened to me. So now I can make sure it doesn't happen to you.
Exactly. Yes. And that's the great philosophy, right? It's like, I would love to tell you about the time where I flipped a whole house on credit cards and I had to do a bunch of balance transfers so I could keep 0% interest because I didn't have any money to actually finish that flip, and it's like, there was so much stress that I was under in those types of situations. But at the end of the day, I got through it. And there's a lot of people that they don't even want to, hey, I can't be a landlord. Like there's way too many headaches. Yeah, there's headaches, but there's a reward.
Yeah, there's
a big reward.
Yeah,
you might go through a turbulent time, but at the end, like if you don't stop, you can't lose.
I think another great thing that you were talking about in your house hack thing is that there is that you were talking about that intrinsic value, but there is value. When people buy a multi-unit and they're like, I'm going to live in it. I'm like, okay, well, what would you have paid for rent? Like for shits and giggles, I get like emails from like, I'm never going to rent, but I get emails for rental companies and like this. And I got something from, I don't even know where it's at, the Sinclair. It's some rental place downtown. And I was like, let me see what rents are. Like, because when I rent my stuff for my clients, I need to know where full amenity buildings are versus mine. Because, I don't want to push them there. I want to provide value.
Yeah.
And I saw 1,150 square feet, and they had one left out of like a building that's 90 towers or whatever, however big it is. And it was $4,000, like $50. But then you had to pay a tech fee, and the tech fee was for air conditioning.
Oh my God.
So you was like, And then like it's 4,000, but then there's like another 600 to live.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you want electricity? That's this bundle.
Mm-hmm.
You want cable? That's this bundle. You're paying you're paying $4 and 25 cents a foot.
Yeah.
So you have a gym that you never go to, or you have a bowling alley, or you have a pool table. Let me tell you something. If you're paying $4,000 a month in rent, you don't have time to do anything because you're working at all times just to pay rent.
Yeah.
Because that's $4,000 clear.
Yeah.
So that means you're making $7,000 to $8,000. That means you're making almost $100,000 as a young person. Okay, the average, I just know this guy just left the college. The average person first year out of MIT makes $115,000. If you have to graduate from MIT to afford a 2-bedroom, what are you doing?
Yeah, man. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's a lot of it is just like, it's optics. People love that whole lifestyle. Like, oh, I'm successful because I rent in a very impressive building.
Life doesn't start, I'm going to tell you right now, being 50, life doesn't start till you're in your 40s.
Oh, all right. Tell us why.
It doesn't. I'm going to tell you why.
Here. Yeah.
If you want a great life, it doesn't. It's 2 decades of hard work.
Yeah.
And then about 44, 43, you really start to live. And at that point, if you have children, you can now enjoy that time with the children because you can do things.
Yeah.
So it's either live paycheck to paycheck, in your 20s and 30s, go to bars, go to clubs, rip through cash, live on credit cards, and then not enjoy yourself when you should enjoy yourself in your 40s. Because when you're in your 40s, you can enjoy yourself because you actually understand what joy is.
Yeah.
It's not a bar, it's not drinking, it's not getting high. It's like, I'm able to spend time with X, Y, and Z and do things that I like to do with these people.
Yeah.
And people just don't understand that.
Yeah.
They live really poor and tight because they rip through everything and they never, like, you want to do something like that's extravagant, you have 16 to 19 properties to pull a loan off of, or a home equity loan, or this or that. Say, you know what? I'm going to buy, buying in your 20s, unless you're really rocking, which people do, but buying a $100,000 car, or no one buys cars now, leasing a car for $2,000 a month or $1,500 a month, man, you know what that car is going to cost you when you're 50?
Yeah.
That's like $1 million car. Lease a 500. I don't believe in leases, period. I buy everything because if I can't buy it, that means I can't afford it.
Can't afford it. Yeah.
So that's like, my dad taught me that growing up. It's like, if you have to lease it, you shouldn't own it.
Yeah.
That was like, and I can't get away from that.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's like when I was 4, he would just whisper that if you can't buy it, you can't afford it.
Yeah.
So like that $500, like, dude, my kids' college, over $250 a month. That's it. Since they were born, $250 a month. My 16-year-old, I won't have to pay 1 penny for his college, no matter where he goes. Compound interest, man. You don't, those dumb mistakes. Everyone makes a mistake. Everyone does, like, I'm going to buy a bottle of this at the bar. Like, I'm not saying don't live your life.
Yeah.
But you've got to put money away. And this is what real estate does. It forces you to put money away. If you cannot control yourself, if you cannot contribute to a 401k, all those homes are 401ks.
Yeah.
They're forcing you not to spend that money because you got to put it into your property.
Yeah. It's the only asset that pays you in multiple ways. Okay? Like, people want to, oh, hey, I'm in the IRA game and, my 401k is tapped out or whatever, or I have a brokerage account. That's great. You should also have some of those things. But at the same time, real estate is the only asset that I am aware of. Crypto doesn't, right? It's the same thing as stocks, basically. But again, it's the 4 components we were talking about: cash flow, depreciation, principal pay down, and appreciation.
Yeah.
Right? It's those 4 things that pay you in so many ways that you just can't get from other asset classes.
And people are always like, oh, the market's going to go down. Yeah, it is. But there's utility. You're living there.
Yeah.
You're like, no one takes into account your utility. No one takes it. Like if I sold my house in Bucktown right now and I made no money, and everyone I feel like should have this. I mean, you want to make money, you want your assets to appreciate. But if I didn't, and I sold it now, I had 5 years of like some of the best memories living there.
Totally. Yes.
People, and I don't know if that's this younger generation. People don't attribute happiness as an asset or as money. Happiness is money, man. Like the fact that you enjoy where you come home and you have pride in your home, that's an asset. There is utility to that. There is something going on in your body that you wouldn't have walking into an apartment that you don't own and you're cutting a check and knowing that you're making someone else rich. I just fully believe that.
Yeah. I have a great story to that too, because I actually just helped a client close. They moved from Naperville to Lamont. And I don't know if you've come across this, but I actually hate when agents do this. But we were in a multiple bid situation on this one, and the agent said, "Hey, no escalation clauses." So like my easy way to win is high escalation clause, but we're going $5,000 to $7,000 above the next best offer, and then we kind of have some of the other attractive things. And then the moment that
I don't allow escalation clauses.
Okay, yeah, okay. I want to understand why, and I'm always talking bad about you.
You end up getting more money.
I think you get less.
I don't.
Oh, it's funny. You sometimes I don't know. I'd have to actually look at the data of like where that situation has happened.
Because people end up going to the top of their escalation clause.
Yeah, sometimes actually, but I've had it where it was the opposite. They were like, "Hey, no, like because here's how I can structure the win."
Tell me.
Okay, here's how I can structure the win. Hey, we're gonna put our escalation clause $50,000 above the asking price because we're just putting a high value here. Chances are it's probably gonna land at $30,000. Okay, because that's just where everything is unfolding. But at least we're going to be the ones that are likely going to win that situation. Now, if it comes to the moment where I say, okay, guys, I want you to go $50,000 above the asking price, and we don't know what the other offers are going to be, they're going to be like, you're effing nuts.
But somebody else will do it.
Maybe.
I'm telling you.
Maybe. And it's a hard situation. But my clients will actually go less in like they won't go 50,000 because they know that that's like egregious. It's way too much.
But what happens if they got pinned on that 50?
Well, then they feel better about it because there was proof that somebody else was willing to pay it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like that.
Oh, okay.
There's other people that are, well, that's a herd mentality thing. There's other people that are as dumb as I am.
But so we had the situation here, going back to the story. We had the situation where they weren't allowing escalation clauses. And so I gave them hey, here's where I think the value is. And I said, ultimately, at the end of the day, you guys have a very long-term outlook on this home. You don't plan on moving for the next 10 years. And, here's what the fair market value is. I think that we'll end up winning here, but, I'm not going to be mad if you don't think that that's enough and that we got to go, $35,000 high, like 35 above. And they went with the high number because they just knew. They're like, this is the dream neighborhood. This brings the happiness. This is the lot we wanted. Like, we don't care if we're paying more for this house because we want it.
Yeah.
And so that's what you were talking about. They understood the value and the happiness factor of it.
That's my problem with appraisers.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And yes. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, I agree with you. And I like, it's very interesting. We have such the same tactic. I say the same thing. Here's the value. Here's where it's going to trade. This is where it should trade. Mm-hmm. But I always say to them, at what point are you not upset that you didn't get the house? That's how I phrase it.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I said, if it trades, let's say it's a $700,000 house. If it trades at $735,000, are you upset? They're like, yes. I said, then you have to be at $735,000. If it trades at $740,000, you're upset. Yes, $740,000. If it trades at $750,000, you're upset. They're like, no. Okay, $740,000 to $745,000 is where you should go, because if you don't get the house, we want to have a smile on our face and said, we gave it our best. Mm-hmm. Nothing that we did, and if you gave it your best, you're fine. I said, but if you, I said, and I'm telling you, I've done this so many times, if you go at $725,000 and in your head, you're like, I would went to $735,000 and you don't get it at $725,000, you're going to kick yourself in the ass.
Totally.
for the rest of the time.
Yep.
Like you're literally going to be so upset at yourself.
Yep. And this is why the escalation clause really works out, because it forces you, if I got to get up there, no problem. And
I do like how you say it's great for the buyers, because the buyers then feel justified.
They feel totally justified. But sometimes
I've never had that thought.
But sometimes as a listing agent, you do get the escalation that ends up winning it in that situation. I always will then say to my sellers, hey, chances are they're going to get stage fright. And they're going to
get ready.
So it's just setting the expectation is that typically somebody that does win a multiple bid situation and they do go what looks to be high, there's a higher probability that deal is going to drop out, right?
When I'm in multiple offers, and this will be interesting, I'll get your thought on this. So I'm like a very strict handshake guy. So like if I have a client that wants a property and there's multiple offers and we put an offer in, I'll say to the client, you're sure this. If we get the property and that client backs out because now they're scared, I fire the client.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Instantly.
Yeah.
Because this is something that you have, that people would probably not see it the way that I see it. I don't fire them because I'm upset I'm not getting paid. I'm firing them because you just made the next 40 clients that I work with harder to get a home. Because every time your reputation, and people don't understand this, and people that shop without a buyer's broker, newsflash, you ain't getting shit. Because literally, and it's nothing to do with me. I'm more on the sell side. I'm just telling you, as a person that sells a lot, I will take an offer from someone that's represented before they're not represented. All things consistent. And if they're not consistent, I say to my seller, I've done deals with this person, I haven't done deals with this person, I've done deals with this person, I've done deals with this person. And they're always like, it's not about the highest price. I mean, unless it's egregiously different, who's going to close? And the terms. Because I can get an offer for $800 on a 780 property and it doesn't close. It's not an offer. The 790 that's going to close is an offer.
Yeah. Dude, I'll tell you this, and I'm sure you have a lot of situations that you've come across, but like to do the whole dual agency thing, whenever I think that there's easy money on the table, it never happens.
So never. I know. So everyone, it's so funny you say that. So like I have a really good friend, and I'll say his first name but his last, but Ken, and he'll laugh when he hears this because he listens to the podcast. About 3 years ago, we were talking, and he was asking about my numbers, and we're talking about rankings, and I'm like, he's like, if I would take dual agency, I would have been like 13th versus 17th or this. And he's like, you don't do dual agency? I was like, never.
Yeah.
I said, everything is non-agent, or before it was a Ministerials Act and that changed. Everything's non-agent.
Yes.
He's like, but then you don't get the credit. I go, I don't need the credit, man.
Yeah.
I go, I don't want to get sued.
Yeah.
Every time that you do dual agency, for me, it is an absolute.
It's a shit show, man. It's yeah. You turn from this whole conversation is about how we're advisors. You can't advise.
No,
you've lost it.
You're just a mouthpiece.
And now you're collecting both sides. It's actually I'm in the same boat. I always have my sellers check. They don't allow it because at the end of the day, I'm just going to refer it into somebody that's at my brokerage, right? And I'll still be able to get my cut on that, right?
Yeah.
But they're going to be represented. And we've had that happen a number of times and it's like, all right, within house, it's great. But that's, I just don't want to, I don't even want to do that.
I don't even do that.
Really?
I'm like, you came to this open house, you don't have an agent. First off, all those people think they're smarter than God. So right there, I don't want to buy, I don't have time for that.
It's true.
I don't got time for that.
Yeah.
I don't have time for you to tell me how much better you are than me.
Yeah.
I don't got time for that.
Yeah.
And I could tell you the professions that are always looking to represent themselves. That's great. So then I'm like, here's non-agency. I said, I'm going to process all your stuff, answer all your questions. I do not work for you.
Yeah.
Anything you tell me, I can tell my client. So don't tell me anything that's going to jeopardize yourself. And I'll just be like, you came in, seems like you know what you're doing. Here you go. And let's get at it. And then, I give up a decent amount of productivity on the stuff. I don't care. It's not worth it, man.
Yeah.
It's just not worth it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and and it's also illegal in other states. You know,
I know
it's just not
there should
illegal
not be
in
dual agency.
Illinois. Yeah,
it's just where every issue that and rentals are the two things that are just a nightmare in terms of legal stuff.
Yeah.
But that kind of leads us into this Saturday, which this podcast will air in a week. So last Saturday, which is this Saturday, we change how we do business.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be a situation that we're talking about where people are going to be coming in, and it's going to be, unfortunately, buyer beware. I am of the opinion that people people like yourself, your clients, I don't think it's going to change. I think people are still going to pay for your services. You're going to ask for a credit at closing and the contract.
Yes.
And hey, I got 2, I didn't get 2.5, you owe me half.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
I think it's going to be completely the same.
Mm-hmm.
I think the prices are going to do exactly opposite. So let's just say anything the government does, the product that's going to happen from the government is opposite of what they want, because the government's full of idiots. So the government's doing this to lower prices, basically to compress commissions. That's kind of their whole thing, is that everything's negotiable all the time, and hopefully everybody gets beat up. That's their whole thing, and keep the prices down. When you train and you do enough research and you get ready for this Saturday, I believe the exact opposite's going to occur.
Agreed.
I believe selling agents are going to make more money because they're going to be like, hey, commissions are compressed. You don't have to pay the buyer.
Right.
Okay. Oh, the guys will be, that's great. I'll give you 3.5%. I'm not paying the buyer 4%, whatever it is. But now people have buyer's agreements that say you have to pay me 2 or 2.5%. So now the 3.5% is fixed in the price to the seller, right? And now the buyer is paying 2.5% to their broker. So the average, it's like 5.1 or 5.2 is the average commission in Illinois that people pay. It's like right around there.
Yeah.
Now it's going to be 6.
Yeah.
And the only person paying that 6 is the buyer. Because the buyer is going to pay the 2.5, and the buyer intrinsically is going to pay the 3.5 that I'm getting.
Yeah.
So now we've gone from 5 to 6 consistently.
Yeah.
And this is to help the buyer. And
right.
Now, if the buyer doesn't want to sign this agreement, they got to go around themselves. What happens if you don't have that? Or if you're FHA and you need credits?
Yeah.
So anyone that's shopping FHA, anyone that's the lower end that can't afford this is literally going to be walking around blind.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying this because I'm a real estate agent. I'm saying this, I'm removing myself from the situation, and I'm reading it like as if I'm reading a philosophy book, a psychology book, or a business book. Like I'm reading this and I'm saying, this is going to create the exact opposite. And
totally.
And if you don't think it is, you have not looked at the ruling and what has changed.
Yeah, yeah. So let's just put the example.
You're just ignorant to it.
Yeah, let's just put the example of kind of what you said is that, you can ask for a credit, and that credit can be paid for your buyer's agent. That's actually how I'm trying to phrase it.
That's how it's going to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's a lot of value there for a buyer's agent to say hey, it's kind of business as usual for now. They might offer a commission, and if they offer partial, we'll have to basically just put it into a credit.
Yeah.
And chances are we'll probably be able to get that. If, we have an appraisal problem, we kind of cross that bridge as we get there. But what does that do? Even if there is no commission that's being offered, and now, okay, I have to inflate this price by $10,000.
It's still been inflated.
It's inflated.
Yes.
Hey, prices are just going to go higher.
Yes.
And who's paying it?
The buyer. Yes. It's so ridiculous.
And so
it's because it's the government.
Yeah.
The Department of Justice, whatever the government does, the action will create the opposite reaction.
Right.
Because it's literally a bunch of clowns.
Yeah. And so this is going to be a bull market.
Yeah.
Because we don't have inventory. We still have interest rates that are high. They are trending downward. And as they kind of get into the 5s, you'll see more buyers come out. But honestly, I'm not convinced that we are going to see this huge influx of inventory coming to the market if we have if we're at 5.5% or a little higher on rates. But you are going to see more buyers. We're already starting to see more buyers coming into the market.
You can't get a permit.
Oh, true. Right. Yeah.
That's what I've been harping on.
Right.
I've been harping on Instagram. Because I just did an interview yesterday for my buyer, for my seller, my developer, in Northbrook, and just to do, like when you submit a site plan, just to do the elevations, how the water needs to go off the house, just that is 1 year. 1 year. So at a minimum, a house from mental conception to door opening is 2.5 years now.
That's insanity.
The city of Chicago, the permit process is 3x from where it was during the pandemic.
That's insane.
3x. It's gone from 2 months to 6 months to get a permit. So you cannot create supply
even if you have self-certified architects.
Doesn't matter.
Wow.
That's how long it takes you to get it.
Wow.
And you're going to have revisions.
Yeah.
And that revision is at least 2 months. It's so contradictory. Like everyone's like, let's do this. And here's the problem. And I did something on this. They're saying, let's create buyer incentives. No, buyer incentives creates higher pricing.
Yes.
They don't fucking understand supply and demand. Like, can we get an economist in the city of Chicago?
Well, that's what, when Biden had the State of the Union, he was like, we're going to offer, what,
10K.
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
No, we don't need that. We need more supply, bro. We need you to build like crazy. Like, go back to this, the natural dynamics of the market, which is supply and demand. And we still have a lot of demand and we don't have any supply. You got to fix the supply part. When is that going to happen?
When everyone was like, I want to say like 2 years ago, when I started really doing social media, and I used to do a chalkboard, and like I literally would have a supply. If you go back, if you go on Instagram and go back, I have literally supply and demand chalks. I'm like this, and people are like, the market's going to crash. Rates are 8%. And some person, I will not steal it. I don't know who said it, but someone said this the most perfect way. They said, supply is so low, which it still is now. Supply is still so low that let's say there's 100 homes. There is 2,000 buyers for that home, for those 100 homes at 3%. There are, at 4%, there's 900. At 5%, there's 600. At 7, 8, 9, and it's just, the problem is at 12%, there's still 200 buyers for those 100 homes. Because people could not grab the concept that as rates were jumping astronomically, pricing was following.
Yes.
And I'm like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I go, you have to have, until demand is under supply, you will never have price depreciation. And I don't think we're going to have that for another 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
We're 4.5 million homes short.
Yeah, I agree. And it actually makes me really nervous for people as we talk about the renters and, paying so much in rent. Honestly, dude, they are creating a permanent renter society.
Well, they want that.
They do. They want that.
They want that's control.
Yeah.
You strip everyone of their belongings.
These prices are just going to take off, and nobody expected, the average person didn't expect prices to go up over the last 4 years when interest rates were high, and they certainly did. And they're just like, wow, this is crazy. The house down the street is selling. There's nothing in the suburbs. Everybody wants to be in the suburbs. There's like 1.5 months of supply in the suburbs, meaning that if there's no new listings that came to the market, every single property that was in the suburbs would be sold in 1.5 months.
Yeah, there's under 3 months in the city of Chicago. Think about this. A size of Chicago, in 3 months there's no homes.
Yeah. And so that is a upward pressure on prices, and as you get more buyers that come into the market with all this momentum of lower interest rates. Listen,
that's why I don't want them to cut interest rates. When they were like,
I'm the same way. I was with you.
Do not.
Yeah.
I'm like, let that spread will naturally come in, because the natural spread's about a point and change, and we were at 2. And I just called that the Biden spread because no one knew what the fuck was going on.
Yeah.
That's
so the spread between the 10-year and the 30-year, right?
It was way out of whack.
Yeah, so it was up at 3. It was up at 3 at the highest point.
Yeah,
now it's at 2.5. Normal is 2.
Yeah,
so we've got 50 basis points there. Yep.
And that's all you need.
Yeah.
You get rates in my opinion, you get rates into the 5s, it's lights out.
Yeah.
It's going to be like, because
more buyers are going to enter, but does that entice sellers? Does that entice sellers? I don't know if that does. I'm not convinced that it does.
I think what it does is what I think will happen is it's going to entice people to become landlords.
Yes. Yeah.
Because why am I giving up? Like everyone's like, for instance, and people you think this way, but people don't think this way. Yesterday, the inflation number is 2.9. Okay, whatever it is, 2.5 or 2.9. That's including food, energy. So inflation's at 2.9 unless you have to live. So people are like, these numbers are so stupid.
Yeah.
But let's just say, for argument's sake, it's 2.9. So everyone, I'll back up again. So everyone knows when you get an inflation number, it's X food and energy. So like when you're saying inflation is going down, that's everything except food, energy, and housing. Okay, anyways. So if inflation's at 2.9 and I have a 2.5% loan, that means that every month the house goes up 0.04 just in value.
Oh, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Just in value. Mm-hmm. Just because your dollar. So like when I'm going to get off track here, but you'll love this. Mm-hmm. When I talk to people about buying a house, I go, you're not buying a house. You're buying the US dollar at this rate. And you own $1.8 million fixed at 3%. Mm-hmm. So when interest rates go higher, I've made my rate's 2.75 on a 15-year. I don't believe in 30s. It's a whole other discussion. But I'm at 2.75 on a 15-year. When inflation and rates went up to 6, the value of my house, my dollars, increased double. Because I own that dollar at such a lower cost. Yeah. And think of this to people as, when I try to break it down to people, my background is economics. So when I try to break it down to people, I go, milk and eggs. Mm-hmm. Just because you now make $100,000, you really don't make $100,000, because milk was $1.50, now milk is $7. Mm-hmm. We've all actually lost like 25% of our wealth, unless you own real estate, over the last 4 years. Yeah. In 2019, $1 is now worth, how much you think?
Ooh.
I just read this, so I know.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't even
25 cents.
25 cents. Wow. Ooh.
So if you're retiring, if you have a retirement, like inflation is the hidden tax. Like it is the killer. When they print money, they are killing you. So $1 is worth 25 cents. So if you have $100,000 in your retirement account in 2019, it is now worth $25,000. And you're like, no, it's not like it is, because you need to go apples to apples. Like I always say to people, like, oh, what's the highest grossing film of all time? You can't go to your phone and say, oh, it's Star Wars 19. No, it's Gone with the fucking Wind. And it'll always be Gone with the Wind, because you have to adjust for inflation, because a dollar is not worth what a dollar is. Yeah. That $100,000 doesn't, like, my developer would be like, oh my God, I can't believe we got 1.1 million. This is a true story. We got 1.1 million in West Belmont Crane, or like in that area in Springfield, on a house. He's like, he's like, when we thought about this, he's like, this is a great example. When we thought about this house and what we're going to sell it at, we were at like 900, 9.25 at the most. Yeah. I said, okay, Lawrence, we sold it for 1.1. We thought 9.25, so we made an extra 175,000. He goes, how much more extra did it cost you to build that house? He looks at me. It's like, about 150 grand. Yeah. Just in inflation, just in price inflation. Exactly. I go, then you didn't make that, bro. You made an extra 25 grand. Yeah. Like, people don't think that way, but with real estate, you're buying, when you get that 30-year mortgage, those dollars are there. They don't move. You're owning U.S. treasuries. Like, I don't know if you've ever said that to people. Like, that's like, to me, it's like, I'm buying this because I own treasuries. So when people say that that real estate is a hedge against inflation, what they're saying is you're buying those dollars and they can't move. Yep. All the other dollars move, but that you own those dollars. So when your house, you buy a 1.8 house in 2019, and now it's worth 2.7. It ain't worth 2.7. Yeah. Because the dollar's been so devalued. Maybe you made a little bit of money, but you'll always own those dollars from 2.75.
Yeah, and most people
don't understand that.
Well, they don't understand it because we haven't really seen inflation happen since maybe the 70s or so. Yeah, and I think that's always been the tune, is like, oh, okay, inflation adjusted, but it's only like 2 to 3% per year. Yeah, as long as my salary is going up 3.5%, if inflation went up 3, I'm okay, right? Yeah. I'm making more than what it's costing me to live. But then all of a sudden, people weren't ready for this 10% inflation that we saw.
And then people are like, I can't afford groceries.
No.
I can't afford food.
Right.
I mean, I have 3 kids I have 3 boys. I mean, like, my groceries are $500 a week.
Yeah.
And I always say to my wife, I'm like, I don't understand how people do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not shopping at Whole Foods.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Did you listen to the Spaces with Trump and Elon?
No, I want to listen. I've listened to like 20 minutes of it.
Okay. All right. Well, Elon just talks about like he wants to be a part of a government efficiency program, right? And he wants to really analyze the spending that is going on in the U.S. government.
Oh, forget it, dude.
Right?
Yeah.
And so he wants to be able to cut. And like, but if you think about it, he's like, he bought Twitter and he just whacked all of these people and
like
realized
75%.
And realized that, hey, I can operate this whole business with a quarter of what's actually here.
Yeah.
And so if you think about it, if that were to actually happen in the US, where they were to, because that's where inflation comes from, right? It's government spending.
Yeah.
It's overspending, right? And so if we had a guy like Elon who comes out and is able to really analyze what's going on in the government. My wife used to work for the government, and she's like, they call it the $400 hammer. A hammer cost in the government is $400 versus the average person, it's $25.
When Elon was in San Francisco, they were going to build public bathrooms. Do you remember the story? Look this up.
Mm-mm.
And it was going to cost the city of San Francisco, I may be off by a little bit, but I'm pretty damn close, like $2 million a bathroom to put them out there. And Elon's like, hey, listen, I could do the bathrooms for like $150,000.
Right, yeah.
And San Francisco is like, you can build the bathrooms for $150,000, but there's still all this permit process that's going to still cost this much money. It's insane. Mm-hmm. I mean, I read today they just did an audit, and they realized that they sent $233 million to the wrong place, and it went to the Taliban.
Oh, right, yeah.
They don't know what, and how about the fact, I mean, I don't want to get too hard into politics because it's just like, oh my God, this is where I think people love being ignorant. And just because it's a safe place to be.
Yeah.
How about the fact that the people that are in charge of spending at the same time can print money? And that's why they got off the gold standard.
Yeah.
There's a large percentage of people. I mean, a lot of people think Kennedy was killed for the Bay of Pigs and other things that had to do with the mafia and casinos and Cuba. I mean, the second movie on what's the gangster movie with Pacino, the old one, Godfather. Godfather 2 is all about killing Kennedy because the mob was going into Cuba. But a lot of people say Kennedy wanted to get back on a standard. And a lot of people said that that was one of the main reasons he was also killed, because then they couldn't print cash. I mean, think about the fact that, if as consumers, we have a credit card. Mm-hmm. At any time we overcharge on our Visa, we can just move our credit limit. And Visa doesn't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
And we don't have to pay the interest.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like literally insane.
Yeah.
It's so insane. And people, and the byproduct is every time they print money, your money is worth less. And they know that. Mm-hmm. Like there's no reason that they don't know that. It's the fundamentals.
Like I learned that when I was in economics class.
Yeah. Well, we're talking right now. We're creating supply. Mm-hmm. So we're just devaluing that. The prices go down. If I build 1,000 homes, it's going to be a lot. The prices are going to be lower than if I only have 10 homes.
Yep.
I mean, the spending is going to be the killer.
Yeah.
And that's all I talk about a lot of times when I do like my little 2-second things.
Right.
It's just.
And so I'm just so nervous because, like, some people say, hey, we're starting to see the unemployment rate, increase, and so they should be cutting rates. But what's going to happen specifically for real estate is that we're going to cause another inflation period for real estate the moment we start cutting rates. And if it's, again, we're just going to get a lot more buyers into the market.
2025 and 2026 will be a disaster if we cut rates.
Totally.
It'll be an absolute disaster.
The people that own real estate are going to get richer.
Yeah, no.
And it's going to be the people that don't own are going to be so handcuffed to get into the market. They won't know how. They won't be able to afford it. And that's like the biggest problem that we have. Like, we are in a really big pickle because we had low interest rates for so long, because we have majority of America has no mortgage or something that's in under 4.
Yeah, I think 70% are under 4.
Yeah. It's insane, man. So if you're telling me that as we get into a 5% range where we're going to see a lot more buyers, again, I don't think we're seeing the supply come.
No. There's too much red tape to get stuff done.
Yeah.
And
and Brandon Johnson came out and said, hey, we're going to be really favorable to developers and they're going to cut regulations. I was actually pretty impressed with that whole plan. Did you see any of that?
Let's see it.
But but what you're telling me is no, that's not happening.
Well, I mean, if he just said it yesterday, that's fine. But I would like to see it. What they really need to do, and I've done TikToks on this and had discussions across the nation. That's the best platform for people talking. Oh man, people just get involved in TikTok.
Man, I got to get on there. I'm still on the whole phase China's stealing my data.
Everybody's stealing your data.
Yeah, that is true.
You got it. This is stealing your data. There's little microphones in there. The Affordable Housing Act is what's killing supply, and people don't understand when you try to increase density in a piece of property, if you go to a certain density, there's a certain percentage of that density that has to be affordable housing, which is great. Mm-hmm. The problem is, which people don't understand, is that those units have to mimic the other units. Mm. So you can't build 4 3-bedrooms, 4 2-bedrooms, and then 6 small studios that are affordable for people to live in.
Oh, yeah.
You can't do that.
Right.
So the project is the project doesn't work. You actually lose any time that you go to affordable housing, unless you get the land for free, and sometimes Chicago will do that. Unless you get the land for free, it does not work. That's why no one does it. If they said, hey, we just want you to build units that are affordable by the low end of the median income in that area, and you can build a unit that at least scratches, then people would do it.
Yeah.
They don't want the density. They tell you they want the density so that they can be on the podium and say affordable housing, affordable housing. But how they've written the laws, you can't build it. And they know that because the aldermen are told by the people that put them in office, this is my $1 million home. You better not put a multi-unit next to me. You better not take that R3 lot. First off, every lot was R4. Every lot was a 3-unit buildable or whatever. They downzoned. All of Bucktown was R4 when I moved here in the 90s because they wanted to attract builders. Mm-hmm. As soon as a neighborhood gets established, they go to the alderman and they're like downzone. And everything went from R4 to R3.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know that.
So they downzone. Any area that becomes attractive, they downzone. Because they don't want density. Because the neighbors, the constituents don't want density. It's all NIMBYs. It's all not in my backyard people, right? So we want affordable housing. Yes. It just can't be in Bucktown, and it can't be in Lincoln Park. It can't be in Old Town. It can't be here. Why don't you put it 40 miles northwest in Carpentersville, where they put everybody, all the deals when they tore down Cabrini Green, they structured deals and shipped all the affordable housing out to the suburbs, and they cut checks to those suburbs.
Wow. Yeah. I've heard that story. I need to look into more of that.
Yeah, there was massive deals that Daily cut and shipped everybody out, right? Because the population density that's occurring, the migration away from the city of Chicago, if you look at that, it's low income that's moving out because of problems with zoning. If you want housing, if you want houses to go cheaper, let them build multiple houses on properties and smaller. If I got a 25,
you have to.
If I got a 25 by 125 lot, let me build row homes. Let me build 2 row homes.
Yeah.
They won't do it.
Yeah.
So it's all speak, because when it comes down to it, how they've structured the laws, it's like saying, hey, you could drive 100, but this car only goes 65, and you can only buy this car. But you could drive 100.
Yeah.
Well, the fastest car only goes 65, though. That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems like zoning is a really big problem.
It's
that's
a huge problem.
That's a red tape thing, right? That could be changed by the right person.
Well, a person coming into office and saying, we need affordable housing.
Right.
We'll let you build affordable housing. We'll upzone on major streets, and we'll allow you to build X amount of units and X amount of eco units and this, and this. Because what they say is that it's not fair that someone lives in a building. Think of how screwed up this is. They say it's not fair that someone lives in a building and has a smaller unit than someone that paid fair market value. So I paid $500,000 for this unit, and I'm paying $150,000 for the same unit, and it's not fair for them to be in a smaller place. Dude, what are you talking about? What are you talking about?
Make it make sense, you know?
Then no one gets anything.
Yeah.
I can't say, oh, this guy's got a 5,000 square foot home, he paid $2 million. I can only buy a $1 million home. That home should be $1 million. That's what the government's saying.
Right.
Then you're stopping the fair market system from providing that inventory. All you're doing is stopping people. No one wants to no one's going to retire off a 12-unit building, but no one is doing anything if they're not going to make some money for their effort and the risk.
Right.
The risk is the market could turn while he's building this, and he's broke.
Yep. I mean, there's a lot of people that won't even touch Illinois and Chicago. You know, I know investors that are just like the big guys. Like
no one that's big touches the state.
Right.
No one.
The big guys.
One.
They don't want
like
to.
Big money. I'm talking.
Yeah.
Big money.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't want to because of just all the regulatory stuff.
Yeah.
And it's not a landlord friendly state. It's, you know, there's so much extra stuff. They can just go elsewhere.
I'm like, do you do mostly condos or single families or this or that?
So a lot of stuff, I've been doing a lot more single families lately. I had a really great stint of condos. And so like I'm all over the board there.
Because you just brought up RTLO. So I only do Airbnbs now.
Oh.
Because I don't want anyone staying in my place for longer than 25 days.
Okay.
As long as it's a month and shorter,
yeah.
RTLO doesn't apply.
Right.
So at 25 days, I can come into the sheriff or myself and just put you out.
So the Airbnb license is only good for if you are a primary residence or you're building. There's specific rules for it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can get around some of that stuff.
Talk off air. But yeah. So I do.
I sold everything.
Oh, okay.
And I went straight into Airbnbs.
Yeah.
And I just haven't
And you have single families? You have single families that are doing it, or?
I have, row homes, townhomes,
Gotcha.
and then I have partnerships.
Gotcha.
And everyone has an Airbnb under their partnership agreement, right? So you can spread it out.
Yep.
And I'm like, hey, I'll bring you in on 10% equity or 15% equity, and then we'll do an Airbnb, and you can get the license. This. I just don't want. I don't know how you deal with RTLO.
Yeah. Well, it's always changing, right? And it's like there's notices now. All of a sudden,
residential tenant law ordinance. Sorry, RTLO. It's very difficult to be a tenant.
So like if I sign 1-year leases, and every year there is going to be a rent increase that incurs. Okay, but if my tenant has been there for more than 3 years, I have to give them 120-day notice of what the new rent increase is going to be. 120 days is 4 months, man.
Yeah.
That is it's hard for me to even see what's the market going to be, because I always look okay, how much has the rent gone up, or what can I stretch it to if these guys want to leave, and it's just so much harder. So that's if you've been there for more than 3 years, you have to give them 4-month notice. Same thing if you're terminating a lease.
Yeah, I know.
It's just it's so long.
Yeah.
It's so long. And then if you're less than 3 years, then it's 60 days. So that's the biggest challenge, is just aligning those schedules. And at first I thought okay, well, this is new. Tenants don't really know what's going on. Well, now they just changed the lease, so now it's in the lease.
Yeah.
For what the notice is it's very it's so obvious that it's in the lease, and so okay, there's a lot more tenant protections there, and so anyways, it's just navigating that stuff, and it's constantly changing.
Yeah, I had one bad experience. I mean, in my whole life, I had one bad experience, and it was just I was yeah, I'm done. Yeah. I'm I just can't deal with this. I can't deal with this, that, this. I mean, and I mean, from the COVID, no one paying, and this.
Certainly. Yeah, that was a problem, right? And so I
got out before COVID. And I was in Airbnb, and everyone's like, "Oh, Airbnb is not going to do." Airbnb during COVID was a gold mine, because no one wanted to be people didn't want to be in hotels.
Yeah, right.
They wanted their own space where I'm not going to talk to anybody. This, that, or this.
Yeah. So I do have a mix of midterm rentals, and that works. So that's longer than 30 days, but less than a year. And that's worked out quite well. And it's kind of like Airbnb. It's just you're on Furnish Finder and Airbnb. I was always concerned about like the operations behind Airbnb.
I don't do it. I have a person that does it.
Gotcha. Yeah, because that's like a real business. You know,
Dude,
it's like
like I'm on it, so I see what he sees, and like they're worth what they get.
Gotcha.
I mean, it's probably you're probably answering 50 DMs a day, and that's just my properties.
Yeah.
I mean, and he's like, I can get to about 16 properties. He goes, and then I can't do it anymore.
Yeah. See, I'm glad to hear that you don't answer those, because you probably get 100 messages from like.
Yeah, no, I would never.
I mean, I get 100 messages a day. Like, it's.
I didn't manage my own condos. I didn't want anybody having my phone number.
Gotcha. So you outsource to a property management company all the time? Okay.
I was like, I was like, and on top of it, there is being the owner. And I didn't even rent my own properties. I wanted a buffer legally where I'm like, I don't see anything. I don't know anything. I'm not discriminating. Nothing.
Yep. Yep.
I didn't rent my own properties. I didn't anything. I just was like, I'm just the owner. You don't know who I am, and I don't know who you are.
Yeah.
So like, if I did get sued, which you get sued in rentals all the time, like if not you, but like people do. If I did get sued, I'd be like, dude, I have never met this person, never saw them, never. I went on their credit scores and I went on their job verification. That's it. And their debt to income ratios. I said, that's it.
Yep.
I just wanted to completely pull myself out of that space.
Yeah.
When I sell a house, I have, like, my sister's my partner. I never go to showings. I have my sister sell.
That's a good thing, man, because there's so much emotional attachment to your own property that like you get fogged no matter how good you are. And even knowing that, like, hey, I'm selling my own property and I'm not going to get fogged on this. You do. Like, it's impossible to defeat that. I'm glad that you said that, because I've had that same instance where I've tried just doing my own properties and like, I can't. I got to hire somebody else to do it because you're just so emotional about it, no matter who you are.
I know enough not to do it.
Yeah. See, you're smart. Yeah.
Yeah. I know enough not to do it. All right, we have to wrap up. This is great. We're definitely going to do this again. Give us some of your tail up information in terms of how people can reach out to you, and your Twitter, your X handle, your Instagram handle.
Yeah.
If you guys want to know, we're actually going from chart person to chart person. The next person coming in is fantastic at charts.
Oh.
Do you know Chris Delaney?
I don't. No.
You should follow him.
Oh,
he has
cool.
He's extremely chart based. He's a mortgage lender, very
Oh,
trends.
I love that, man. Yeah. No, I want to be able to meet more people that are into the numbers and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, you can find me on Instagram. It's Jason Wagner _real estate. That's a great. I'm posting.
You post on your X.
I post on my X, but then I always post it on Instagram because I just can't grow a following on X at all. I don't know how that whole thing.
I don't know how that works at all. I never posted on X and I'm banned.
Really? Oh boy, that one post you had was pretty bad.
I never had one. I opened up an account, and then like I didn't touch it for like 2 months, and then I came back and it was gone.
Yeah. Wow. Interesting. And then if you want to just reach out, 847-997-1639. My email is jwagner@greystonerealtychicago.com. So,
all right. Thanks so much,
cool.
you guys.
No, thanks for having me.
Oh, it was great.
Appreciate it. It was a great combo.
Thank you so much. Subscribe, download. We're on, obviously, all the apps, the Jason Theory. And we'll be getting this out. Let's see. What's today, the 15th?
Yeah.
August? Bringing it out next week, probably mid-August in the 20s. And looking forward to feedback. So we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Cool. All right. Thanks, everybody.